So as a quick intro, Sheri has placed more than $1 billion in advertising for political campaigns. So she has run the advertising for folks like Governor Newsom, for Kamala Harris, for Senate, for like Libby Schaaf in Oakland, and many, many others in the industry. So we're going to chat about an area that I know very little about, political advertising and how it all works. So first, I want to just ask, as a political neophyte, as far as, okay, you have a candidate, you have a Kamala, what happens behind the scenes as far as who creates the strategy, who does the work to create the audiences, who creates the advertising, et cetera? Can you just map that out for us, like how the people you work with in order to actually execute?
Sure. And it's not just candidates. We do a lot of ballot measures, which are quite different, but a lot more intense, especially to the people in this room, because we use more data. That's not to say we don't use data for candidates, because we have to do that, and it's getting more and more important in our world. But it starts out, they actually come to me, as soon as they know they're going to be a ballot or a candidate, they'll come to me and say, how much is that going to cost us? How much do we need to raise? So we'll just start looking at, maybe television, radio, digital, cable. Depends on the size of the candidate, frankly. I mean, obviously, these presidential, they go all across the country, but they're really only concentrating on about 4 or 5 states right now. You're not seeing any advertising for it locally. You might see it on digitally. So we start with some idea of what we need to raise. And that whole team is not really in my world. They start talking about it. And once they decide who we have to reach, who do we have to convince, where do we go, we start with data. And it's voter data, which is a little bit different than sort of programmatic approach. So that's the lifeblood and the life cycle of our campaigns, because we are testing, polling, checking every single day. We have to know what's going on in the minds of the voter. And as much as you'll hate to hear this, the first thing they'll do is say, we're going to do mail. I know it sounds really archaic to everyone in this room, but there is not a single consultant that I've worked with that will give me the money that I want to spend electronically that they're going to spend on mail. It's just the way it is. They believe that it works. I don't even know how they test the ROI on that. I really don't. But then again, my world is 10 weeks, 12 weeks, unless it's presidential. Then it's, a year and a half. But we start with data, and we start then picking how we're going to do field polling. Then we talk about persuasion methods, and that's where my world comes into play. So now they've said, okay, we really only raised 10 million. We specialize in California, so 10 million is about the minimum you're going to need to run a campaign. We've done $100 million campaigns in California too, but let's say they only came up with 10 and our big budget was 20. So now we retweak that plan, and that buy starts moving, and it's constant change. That's the one thing you can guarantee about political advertising, is it never stays the same.
And what are the channels that you are actually going across?
Well, just about everything now. I don't work on the mail, but we do television, cable, lots of cable, especially for the smaller congressional races or senatorial, California state senatorial. A lot of our work is statewide, so I can pretty much say we do television, and if we do cable, it's generally the larger markets. We do radio, and we do CTV. We've gotten more and more involved in the digital. It's just exploding. But we do just about everything, print, outdoor. We have to. We have to go with the size of the campaign and the geography, and
So out of all those, do you still have a channel that's like, this is the one, this is the most effective, or does it vary by candidate, by type of campaign?
A lot of times it's the consultant. If they're, I will say in my world, it's a lot of older people, which is unusual. And they have a certain way of doing things, and they're not veering enough towards the digital and or things that people in this room would care about. So they tend to go right to television. Again, if it's a small geographic area, we're going to do as much as we can to keep out. We don't want to waste. We never want to waste any money. So we're going to concentrate just on that one little, congressional district, even a supervisor district. You're breaking down as small as you can without losing any voters along the way.
What about Facebook? Since obviously they can do very granular targeting, location, demographics, whatever it is. So success, not success?
Yeah, that's not our thing. I've actually stopped buying any Facebook or Twitter. Now we know that we can't buy Twitter, but I'm leaving that to the social agencies. And here's why. Our click-through rate, our completion rate on Facebook was 3%. It's just not worth it. I don't even care if it's only $1 or a dollar. It's still not worth my spending time on that medium because people are not reacting to it or they're not watching my video. And video is king in my world. So television's it. It's still king.
And so and that's super interesting. So how do you, since there's, the planning and measurement, Nielsen, come in dominating that, but that's been traditional. You mentioned CTV, OTT. How do you go about figuring out the planning and then the measurement of TV? We still use Nielsen, and there's another service called ComScore, but they are so different. You can't combine the two. But what we're finding is Nielsen is getting to be a dinosaur. I still need it because I have to measure from something, right? So we're using it as a guide. But what we've learned is that television stations across the country are not subscribing anymore to Nielsen. And if they don't subscribe, I don't get that data. We've been doing it a long time, so we don't need too much of it. We've learned along the way how to get our adults, 65 plus versus 18 to 49-year-olds. So we're starting to integrate more and more CTV because of it. But the thing about television is I know where my spot's going to run as I'm buying it. And that's important. Generally like it for local news, prime, sports. Those are the key areas, and they're less DVR'd, they're less recorded, but they still are. So Nielsen, not so much. Yeah.
But I can't mix Nielsen and ComScore. So if this station's using ComScore now and this one's using Nielsen, it doesn't work. So we kind of come up with our own machinations for how to get a rating point, and which brings us to another subject. We are going to be one of the first political agencies in the country that are switching to all impression-based, because I don't know how to quantify television anymore. They want to sell it on a cost per point, which is a little bit bogus. It's just that my old school consultants still say, oh, I want 1,000 rating points a week. And of course, I laugh in their face because you can't get 1,000 rating points anymore.
And so with you wanting to do it, so I can see why you want to do it, what about the media channels that you're running it through? Are they open to that? Are they okay? How does that work?
It's going to happen, and it's going to happen very soon and very fast, because NBC owned and operated stations decided about 2 weeks ago they're no longer going to give us ratings for and a cost per point kind of measurement, that they're going to only give us impressions. Because remember, the networks are also selling me NBC.com. Right? So they want apples to apples as well. And then this week, also 3 days ago, Katz Television, which is one of the bigger rep firms, they are doing the same thing. They're jumping right into the NBC Moto Day. So we're going to be forced to do it anyway.
Yeah, interesting. What about the OTT? So Hulu, Roku, any of those kind of guys? Have you placed on those?
Yes. Yeah, we're doing it right now, actually. We decided that a good tool for us, much like the television tool, was the network sites. So we've been buying ABC, NBC, CBS.com, Fox Sports, HBO Go, you name it. We're buying a lot of those. You can't buy on HBO. But we decided to try at least one programmatic approach, but we wanted it matched to our voter data. And I alluded to this earlier to you. We had a terrible, terrible incident with it. I'm not going to name names, but one of the programmatic sellers told me, oh yeah, we can match to your data. So I took and purchased data from PDI, which is a big voter database that is very efficient and constantly upgrading. I bought the data to match it to that programmatic, and it was not successful. In what way? They did not do the match. They couldn't, it was difficult to get them to get there. And then they said, okay, we got it. And I came back from vacation long after the election was over, and I had a check for $250,000 in the mail. So it's scary. We don't.
And that was from undelivered advertising.
They did not. They delivered impressions. What they didn't do was deliver the match. Mm-hmm. Anywhere where we tried to do that. Now, I think this is doable. The people in this room probably know it's doable. Maybe we picked the wrong company. Yeah. Maybe it was just too new of a concept.
Well, you mentioned, as Scott was going on, you said you were excited to hear what he says because you know LiveRamp. So how are you using LiveRamp?
You know, LiveRamp has really become part of our digital package, part of our, my digital buyer will identify for us what vendors, right, are using LiveRamp. Mm-hmm. We don't actually buy it ourselves because we know that we're hoping to pick good vendors, which I obviously didn't do last year, but we're using their data for sure. Right. It's just a matter of how granular do we get. It's more about our choices in vendors.
So one article I read recently I thought was fascinating. It was in the New York Times. Talked about Trump, and he was using a lot of really interesting capabilities and technologies. And you know, they're using, at his rallies, they have beacons to capture the MAIDs, the mobile ad IDs of phones, and then they use that as the key to determine who the people are so that they can then go back after them and target them, et cetera. Is that something, I don't know, you do or your campaign, people you work with are? What's your view on that kind of dynamic?
Yeah, we don't do the actual purchasing and, you know, making that official as part of our role because we feel like the campaign has a better control over the data and where they want to go with things and that next step. We're kind of stay in our lane as media buyers, but I will give him huge kudos. The guy he hired in 2016 was a young man who was getting paid $1,500 a month in his, you know, garage. And he got really super smart about how to do anything and everything. Now he's the campaign manager. The tool that he used most effectively was not just picking up their phone and addressing those people over and over again. He did the same thing on Facebook. He embedded 2 Facebook people into his campaign. And he also did something that I've never seen any campaign do, and so I give him credit. It's really hard to do, is he told me I had more than 50 pieces of creative. Now what that does is it makes my job easier. The more you give me something new to, you know, spread the word, it makes it easier. But I can't get these old farts to do it. They don't have enough bandwidth. They don't have good enough creative, or the money that they expect to spend on media would have to, you know, be put towards creative, and they frankly just don't do it. It's a big bugaboo of mine, because even if I do a really awesome digital buy, they want to use the same 30-second spot that I'm using on television. I need something of lesser length to make it work. I need to get to grab you the second you open up that Facebook or anything else. But yeah, they're really good, and I think that's one of the things that made Trump's campaign so good. Is this guy was super smart, super young, and he knows his technology. So.
Well, obviously representing Newsom, Kamala, Schaaf, et cetera, all Democrats. Does it make you nervous as far as the techniques, the sophistication that you're seeing the Trump campaign deploy?
Yeah, let's hope that Michael Bloomberg can do a better job, because I don't think the Democratic candidates are quite as innovative. I don't think they are. So yeah, it makes me a little nervous. I don't want him to win, but then what we need to think about is possibly creating a new world of political consultants. You know, I'm on the older side. Those guys are all my friends, but I feel like we don't have enough youth in our industry, in my industry, to push that along. My opinion.
So, since we talked about Trump, so Cambridge Analytica, Facebook, that whole dynamic and the privacy aspect of that, did that have ramifications at all in your industry as far as like new guidelines, ways to do things, not do things, et cetera? Any impacts there?
It did make us think about how do we protect our clients, how do we protect ourselves. You know, it changed the way we give an insertion order, for God's sakes. You know, they have to sign the bottom line and tell us that they're complying. And what we're finding is that there are different states that are going to have different privacy regulations, and we're hoping that we have good providers, vendors that are following along with those laws and what they mean. So, but it is making us more careful. We're not doing anything with companies we haven't heard enough about, or who don't give us feedback about their privacy regulatory procedures.
So
yes.
one of the services you have on your website that I just don't even know what it is you say you do unique guerrilla ad campaign techniques. What does that even mean?
If I tell you, I might have to kill you. It just really means that the most important thing about what I do, and I feel so strongly about this, is we don't do anything cookie cutter. I need to hear about what you're trying to do, where you're trying to do it, and how we reach those people. So if Consumer Watchdog came to me one day and they said, well, we want to call out Eric Schmidt at Google. What can we do? We don't have very much money. So I came up with the concept of doing a mobile video truck. We created an animated commercial. The mobile truck went outside their offices where they were having their annual meeting, and Eric was coming in as we were playing this cartoon about him. And it was hugely successful because we called out the press. You know, so anything I can do to help encourage.
And what was that for, since he's not a politician? Is that some?
It was to call him out for their behavior, so to speak. You know, Consumer Watchdog had a certain concept. It's been about 8 years since I did that. But we've done it before. We just did it in San Francisco and Oakland for SEIU in its fight to keep the Kaiser, keep the payroll promises that they gave to everybody, and not go around firing janitors just because they didn't want to pay them $15 an hour. So, and it was also very, very, very successful. We parked those mobile vans outside of every hospital all day for a week. And on the weekends, we went to the farmer's market. So part of what we do might not sound political, but it is.
Yeah.
Almost everything we do, the nonprofits, foundation work, it's still, it's about the homelessness, or it's about, some other effort that's going on in a particular city or burg.
Right.
So
All right.
that's my gorilla.
All right. Well, I appreciate it. Well, we're out of time, so I really appreciate you flying up from LA for this and your time being here. So
Thank you.
Thank you.